And welcome into the Garbage Goal podcast powered by Orlando Lacrosse Report. I'm Patrick Moore with Colin Turner, and today we have a special guest. We have Danny Hogan with us, who's an assistant coach at Lake Mary High School, also one of the masterminds behind the Orlando Open. We're super excited about having him with us. We've got a lot to cover. Colin and I both know Danny, and Danny has been in the lacrosse community in Central Florida and the state of Florida for about 30 years. And so there's a lot to break down and talk about here today on the Garbage Goal podcast. So Danny, thanks for being with us, man. We're super excited about digging into some stuff today.
My pleasure, man. I think it's really cool what you guys are doing with the podcast here.
I appreciate that. And I apologize.
Is this show one, Patrick?
This is episode 1, yes. And I want to go ahead and apologize for Colin. Just in general, I'm going to apologize for Colin for just anything and everything in advance. So I did wear my Florida Gators shirt today since we beat Tennessee last weekend, and I think the Seminoles, Colin sneaked by a Division IV college, BC.
Okay,
was it football?
It just means more in the ACC. It's okay.
Okay, it's all right. And we'll talk a little bit more about Danny's affinity for the Gators as well, because he has obviously a connection to the Florida Gators. But Danny, tell us a little bit, just kind of as we kind of dig into this, just tell the people out there that may not know you a little bit about your lacrosse history, specifically like to Orlando, to Florida. You played high school. How'd you get into lacrosse as a kid? Where'd you play in high school? Where'd you go after high school?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, right now I'm assistant coach up at Lake Mary. I've been there since 2012. My interest and love for the game, I actually grew up. I'm a Florida transplant, like many people. I grew up in a place called Arnold, Maryland. It's just right there next to Annapolis. Started playing when I was 6. When I was 13 in 8th grade, family relocated to Longwood. Didn't get to play in 8th grade, which broke my heart. But then,
that's tough.
At that time there was no, in Central Florida anyway, there was no middle school lacrosse. The game was a little further developed in South Florida at the time. Played 4 years at Lake Mary. Graduated 99. Your boy Colin there, both my junior and my senior year. Lake Brantley lost to Winter Park in the state Final Four. One of those, and Colin, you may agree, one of those was kind of like a seminal moment in, at least my opinion, but in lacrosse kind of making it here in Orlando. In 1998, they beat us 11-10 in OT. It was at Lyman High School. There was a crowd that I had never experienced for a lacrosse game.
Correct.
From 94 to that period. And kind of sparked, because we were the two up-and-coming programs. Prior to that, you had, your West Orange, Oviedo, Cypress Creek actually had a phenomenal team. They don't even have a team anymore. And then what was one of our flagship programs was Lyman, believe it or not, in 97. My brother-in-law actually played on the team. They went to the first, well, a lot of us call the first ever official state championship. But that started a run.
I still think it was a legit state championship.
You have to Patrick to elaborate on that. South Florida has had, no doubt, had lacrosse first. They've had it since the 80s. You talk to somebody from South Florida, there was 15 or 20 state championships before 1997. They merged North Florida, which included Jacksonville, to Orlando, and the champion of that went down and played the champion of the South at Disney. It was actually at the Wide World Sports where they do all those USA games. It was one of the, Colin can attest, it was the coolest. I've been back to Final Fours and state championships and everything. There's still nothing, in my opinion, that compares to Disney. That's not a knock on what they're doing now.
Sure.
But just the way that venue is, it's small enough that it packs out at 2,000 people. And you'll get to, and even back then we got 2,000 people, so it'd be people just lining the rails, standing room only.
Wow.
I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I got to watch, my sisters won 2 state championships, a little bit after the time period we're talking about. But anyways, played at Brantley, lost to Colin and his cohorts, and that sparked about a 10-year run of Lake Brantley, Winter Park squaring off. Bishop Moore was mixed in there as well, of course.
Because this is back when the public schools and private schools were all playing each other. There was one classification.
There was barely one. It was
barely.
My senior year in '99. There was probably, including the Jacksonville teams, which was Bowles, Palm Coast back then. There was probably 30.
Wow. In the whole state, 30 teams playing lacrosse.
No. 30 in Orlando. There was probably another 15 down in the South Florida people. I'm not as well schooled on South Florida history. There's 15. They're probably the stronger lacrosse in South Florida. And then there was about 30 here. It was the founding four was Winter Park, Bishop Moore, I believe Lake Brantley and Lake Mary, and this is all coming from memory, so I may get my facts wrong.
We're not going to hold you to it. We're not going to. There is no encyclopedia for Orlando lacrosse yet. I haven't read that book. Well,
there's that document that Healy posted a couple years ago that had a lot of this in there. Anyway, so it was. I'll circle this all back together at some point, but there was about we'll say 30 teams. There may not have been that many. Yeah. And then I had opportunities to play in college. My recruitment, I was by no means a blue chip player. I had opportunities at walk on type stuff for D1, and then some there was guys Colin and I played with and against that had sensational careers. There's a dude by the name of Scott Petroff that was a sensational defenseman from Lake Howell. Played football and lacrosse at Ohio State, which in 1999 is unheard of. We were not being recruited. A couple of his teammates had very successful careers up at Lynchburg College.
Andy and Kevin Conley.
Sinclair and Kevin, I believe, was a captain. If that you probably know more.
They did very well.
But I just didn't have quite an opportunity that really fit with me. I ended up going to the University of Florida, playing on the club team there, helped kind of raise the profile. It was very much a men's club when I got there, and we turned it very much into a college club team. We had some success. We won the conference. We went from not even being in what is now the MCLA to winning the SELC. We came in as a probationary team, won the SELC, and ended up in the national tournament, finishing top. I think we were number 8 or 7 or something. But
that's incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That had to be a lot of fun because all the boys I talk to that are playing club lacrosse at UF, Florida State, some other schools. It's obviously high level lacrosse. We've seen players that have actually transferred from club lacrosse and gone and played NCAA Division I lacrosse and Division II lacrosse, but regardless of that, it just seems like it's such a fun environment because you're going hard, but it's not 7 days a week, 7 hours a day. You put 2 or 3 days a week hard work in, and then you go have fun and enjoy college.
And that those people that will never lie about the level. It's not the level NCAA schools. Well, not the good ones. There's a lot of bad NCAA lacrosse out there now too. But what I enjoyed about it, I met my best friends to this day, and got to travel and represent my school, and it was awesome for me. It helped a lot in my personal development too, because I had the administrative. I was president of the team for 3 years and whatnot.
Very cool. UF Lacrosse Club Lacrosse has had great success the last couple of years.
They got Garrett Hanharan, who's an alum of the program, who's taken over. He's works in engineering up there, has completely taken that to the next level. Just from their social media to the commitment of the team to active recruitment of high school kids. Like the dude is, can't say enough good things about him. I talk to him every so often, but he is just leagues ahead of anything I could ever imagine. They were ranked number 1 for a good chunk of the season last year. It's amazing what they're doing right now.
And you see Florida embracing it with what they're doing with the Division I team for the girls team. You see them giving the same love to the NCAA team, which is pretty remarkable.
Well, the school, the people do. We're never going to see a Division I as long as you and I and the U.S. government are around. We're never going to see
Title IX, baby.
I don't want that because for me, it's me and there's a kid named Ethan Gerber that plays up there. That played at Lake Howell. That kid could have played anywhere.
Yep.
He's killing it up there, and for the kids, a lot of the rosters from Florida. They got some kids from all over the place because it's kind of reached that level on the academic profile where it's attracting a it's a very appealing option for kids from everywhere. But I think it's great for what it is, and
it's amazing. Well, circling back really quick, because what all our listeners and viewers really want to know is, did Colin actually play in high school, or did he just like get a jersey? Did he buy a jersey off of somebody? Because I hear
someone's got to ride left bench. Someone's got to ride left bench and make it happen.
He had me all hyped up to talk all about his career. Frankly, I don't remember him. No. Colin face-off midi, not even face-off midi, just a midi who faced off. He was a dog. I remember him clearly. He graduated the year after me. They had what Coach Mark Beatty and Tom O'Grady put together at Winter Park. I played for Dave Strum over at Brantley. Chuck Scales, two of the greatest mentors. Those guys did such great things for Central Florida lacrosse, and including starting new programs, and then when O'Grady moved over to Winter Park with Beatty, that's really started. Winter Park was always good, but started going to the state championship every single year.
Exploded.
Yeah, and then so that kind of ties into, after I graduated, I got a coaching job before I had a real job, but that's kind of how I am with lacrosse. And then I did get a real job, made it very hard to coach, but I still did it. That company's long in the rear view for me, but there was an opening. There's a guy named Rich Sanfilippo who's very instrumental in building the Bishop Moore program. He took them to the state finals in 2002. They lost to Pinecrest. 2003, he kind of stepped back a little. I don't think he was the actual head coach. He was still there. They brought some dude in who didn't go very well, and then so the position was open, coincided with me graduating college. I stepped in there 2004 to 2011 was my last year at Bishop Moore.
So you're head coach at Bishop Moore 2004 to 2011.
Yeah,
okay.
And we had some great battles with Winter Park. It was Winter Park, Brantley, Bishop Moore, and then a little later on, you see Timber Creek had some outstanding years. Winter Springs was incredible.
Winter Springs was the team I was telling Patrick about. It was so good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been around the lacrosse community in Orlando now for about 12 years, and it's no knock on their program, but Winter Springs is not a name that pops on the top of the echelon of lacrosse right now in Orlando. But when I talked to Colin, he was like, they were up there.
They were they had a 4 or 5 year run. There's a guy named John Drehoff. He played at Navy in, I'll say, the 70s. I'm being kind. It might have been earlier than that, but he built a tremendous program really around his son David, who was an All-American sensational player, and basically a lot of his buddies in their youth program. And we'll probably touch on this in a minute when we're talking about youth lacrosse. But it is probably hard for some people to understand that there was one point where Lyman and Winter Springs were the show in Orlando. But as we're going on, I'm coaching at Bishop Moore, and then lacrosse that decade of 2002 to not quite the present day, but to right when Highland went on that incredible
run. They went on that run of 15 state championships or whatever it was.
It was by off the top of my head, I think it was 4 out of 6, and it was, I think, 4 out of 5 victories, which was insane. Because during that, everything I'm talking about during that time, it was still, we didn't mention it, but Colin and his teammates in '99 beat Coral Springs, which was the only Central Florida win until, don't quote me on this, but I think Highland's first one was probably in 2013 or something.
That sounds about right.
It was the Orlando champ going down, and often usually the games weren't close, and a lot of times it was Winter Park, St. Andrews. But it was cool because the game blew up around here. You finally saw it, Dr. Phillips got a program, which is an Orlando traditional powerhouse. Timber Creek didn't even exist, until later. Immediately had lacrosse. They were immediately good, fueled by, some very good coaching in all those places.
Was Terry Crowley? I'm trying to remember. Terry Crowley was the head coach of that Coral Springs team, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yes, Coral Springs Tomahawks. It was this is one of the differences between Central Florida and South Florida. South Florida was all these like public schools with this loaded talent, and then it's private schools. Excuse me. The publics were kind of a mess. They organized it as clubs. That team was a nasty team. We played them that year. They had a bunch of guys. Some guys actually played in my old college and post-college roommate played for them. So that's Crowley was doing that. I don't know a tremendous amount of that other than remember playing them, and they were similar to the Terry Crowley team you see now.
Yeah, and now Terry Crowley, for the listeners, Terry Crowley is the head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas, has been there for a while.
Legend.
Won a state championship a couple years ago, and Lake Mary actually beat them this past spring for the state championship.
Yeah, they by my count, 3 since the FHSA took over. So that period was a very exciting time for lacrosse in Central Florida. It really blew up. The Bernhardts went through Brantley. It was still, though, the Central Florida teams were not competitive with mainly St. Andrews. And Spalding developed his program at Highland and went on a run that who knows if it'll ever be matched by Central Florida teams. Yeah. And then we've still kind of maintained this level where there's, a solid handful in Orlando. When you evaluate, South Florida is hard to analyze because all those schools are, they're not clustered like we are here.
Right.
And, in Jacksonville and Tampa, they absolutely outstanding schools, but they've never had, 6 or 5 good schools,
Yeah.
It's always kind of the same.
It's been a one-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been kind of like a one-off situation. Yeah. So now, when you went from, so you have that run, you're at, Bishop Moore, and then when along the way, so how long have you been at Lake Mary? How long have you, because you're coaching with Gary Robinson, how long have you been with Lake Mary team?
Since
almost
2012.
10 years, right?
I think I'm
11
over
years
that.
now,
going to this will be year 12.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And how did you make that connection? Where did that happen?
When I was at Bishop Moore, Gary was at Gulliver Prep, which for that entire period
Football
I described
coach.
he was football and lacrosse coach, and for that entire period I just described was probably the second best team in the state that whole time. They beat St. Andrews. They were the only team coming close to them in that run. Never got to the state final, but similar to how Brantley never did until they kind of reformed out of the districts, and with Jake and Jesse were playing, they went, I believe, back to back in those years. But so Gary was at Gulliver, I was at Bishop Moore. Gary made a change, so we played each other because we were all at Bishop Moore we were pretty good. I mean, we went to the state final, we went to the Central Florida Championship a couple of years, and I knew Gary just because he would schedule me, and I didn't even particularly care for him at that time. Never beat him, and his teams were always tough as hell. And he's a bit of a gruff guy.
He has that effect on you, but he's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, he ended up getting the job at Lake Mary Prep, which they were launching they were putting effort into lacrosse. Never really materialized. He ends over at Lake Mary. That was during my final season at Bishop Moore. They ended up letting me go over, we'll call it parental nonsense. Still, I got nothing but love for Bishop Moore. There's still people over there that like me, but it was, things come to an end sometimes.
It happens.
And, and that was about the time I was, by this time I think, how old was I that year? I was, turning 30. My career had always kind of been set back because I'm always skipping out of work to go coach lacrosse. And all right, I'm going to get my life in order. Step away for a minute, and then he got me in. He's now head coach of Lake Mary. He's got this what ended up being a super talented group that we took to the Final Four, but they were 8th graders. Like, hey, I need a coach for this 8th grade team for a couple tournaments. Come help me out, and then I was back in. And
next thing you know, you're on the sideline and you're wearing red.
We've been there ever since. Which is, it's tough going back because I still have pretty strong connections at Brantley, but going from Bishop Moore to Lake Mary without ever stopping by where I came from, but there was, it ended up working out, and we've had a tremendous ride, and very excited to continue.
Well, touch on. I mean, you had an incredible season. I mean, Colin and I could probably both speak to it. I mean, we watched it firsthand and then watched it from afar as well. But I mean, with Lake Mary's run this year, obviously undefeated. A loaded team, a lot of guys that have played together growing up. It had to be pretty special to finish it out undefeated like that.
It was awesome, man. Because this whole time, I experienced getting close to a state championship early in my career. Had humbly have been a part of a lot of success as a player and a coach. Wherever I go, I thought, all right, we're going to get another crack at this. It didn't come back around. I mean, I will tell you, since Gary and I have been there, we've been to the Final Four. I think that was our 4th trip to the Final Four, which you get so close. We prepare and plan to do that every year. Mm-hmm. Last year it came together, man. The first thing I tell everybody is nobody got in trouble at school. Nobody got injured. The kids just committed. That's what I was saying. And just a tremendous group of kids that truly bought in. It's not easy to play for us up there, and it's a lot of it sucks. But the kids did the work, and it turned out in our favor. There were several opportunities for playoff game against Ponte Vedra, and just feel very fortunate that it all came together like that, because there's been other years where we've had similar prospects, and it's just it takes so much for that to come together, and good to finally get one. That was year 20 of coaching for me. So.
But tell me this. So, we've all been in close games. I love coaching against you and Gary and your whole staff that you have there. It's a very competitive, high-spirited event. The state final was in hand early. 13-5 if I remember correctly?
13-5. The blur that I remember.
How does that feel as a coach?
I was screaming, till the end, until like.
As if it was 1-1 the whole time.
It felt cool afterwards, but it felt like the game. Neither team could score. Both goalies were just lights out for the entire first quarter. Each team was like blowing one-on-ones on the doorstop nonstop, and then they came out of halftime, made a little run, and frankly, it was St. Thomas and their athletic tradition there. Obviously, you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with their football program. Every sport they have down there is like that. Those guys are, you can't relax. They're going to come after you, but
they're going to compete no matter what it is. They're going to compete.
Yeah, we honestly we made the plays and were able to put it away, and then it felt really, really good after that. But during the game, it was the same,
Well, it's the thing about lacrosse. It's a game of runs. We can go back. Obviously, we all have a great personal connection. I have boys that played at Winter Park, still got one there. Was that 3-4 years ago when we played Lake Mary? Winter Park played Lake Mary in the Final Four, and we had a nice, cushy lead for a few minutes, and then the next thing you know, Lake Mary rattled off, whatever it was, 4 or 5 goals, and now we're in a 2-goal game, and I'm on the sideline, about to pass out just like everybody else. So, with a good team like a St. Thomas or vice versa, like Lake Mary that year, you can't rest back on your stick and hope it just ends up okay. You got to fight to the end. So, but man, you guys absolutely just shellacked Plant, and then the St. Thomas game, obviously, and just the whole year just seemed to be in pretty good control, and then won the close ones, right? Like the game against PV, and other games. And so, was there one moment though during the season where you're like, that's a defining moment, or a moment where I was like, man, that was cool, or man, if that had gone one way, that could change everything?
It was the PV playoff game. It wasn't a moment. I'll lump it all in that game. Chris Polanski, I think the world of him.
Love him.
We all know PV's profile, dude. I've stolen so many coaching tricks from him over the years, but we beat them in OT in the regular season, and it's like no secret because for the listeners, Lake Mary's in Orlando, but it's part of the North bracket in the playoffs, and oftentimes it's us and them. Creekside or somebody else, McClay will pop up every now and again, but we see each other a lot, and we beat them in this grinder of a game in the regular season. We went the rest of the year without losing. They took a 4-0 lead early in that. We were playing like this was finally.
Oh, I remember that. They came out.
We didn't play perfect all year, but it's like, oh man, this is the game we showed up flat, and we were like 20-0 or something like that at the time. Not that that matters one bit.
24-0, just as an FYI. 24-0 for those TV scores.
That was at the end, but it was like oh god, this is the one where because sometimes no matter what you do, you just go out there and throw up on yourself, and that's what it was.
Yep.
And we got all this stuff we do on offense and defense, and none of that mattered when you can't throw and catch and you can't execute the simple things. And that game didn't matter. None of that crap mattered. It was just dudes slamming into other guys, earning a ground ball, taking some shot while they're getting hit that just squeaks into the goal. And that's when I felt that our team had the toughness to go through it, because their backs were against the wall. They didn't freak out. We were freaking. The coaches, of course, were freaking out. But that's what sums up that team for me, is because we were able to win one ugly that we and there's just a bunch of different guys making just little plays, sacrificing to get us back in that game.
And what's crazy when you say that, right? So Pontevedra put 4 on you in the fourth quarter to tie it up, to put you into overtime. And Danny, as you're saying this, when you knew you had a squad, this was game 2 of your entire season to go 24-0. To know it as early as you did. What was that, February 18th when I looked at the date here?
Just to clarify, I'm talking about the playoff game.
The playoff game.
Oh, you're going all the way down. All right, gotcha.
The regular season game,
the
regular season game we just about choked away. But at the end of the day, the feeling for a regular season game, obviously you want to win every single game, but that wouldn't have thrown in the garbage.
Yeah, they came out 4.
The years of preparation. PVA came out. It was 4-0. The first half, we ended up grinding out just the ugly 6-5 win, but they all look the same in the newspaper. So
still counts as a win in the win column.
Yeah, wins a win. Yeah, wins a win. Well, let's let's switch gears. You're listening to the Garbage Goal podcast, powered by Orlando Lacrosse Report. We got Patrick, Colin, and we also have our special guest, Danny Hogan, from Lake Mary Lacrosse, and then also with the Orlando Open. I want to dig into this whole tournament lacrosse thing. Okay, so Colin and myself and you obviously have all been to different lacrosse tournaments. I personally, over the years, the last handful of years, I've traveled all over the country with my 2 older boys via Sweet Lax and True and other things like that. And I've kind of seen it all. I've seen the good and the bad. I've seen a lot of good. We've been fortunate to play in some really good tournaments. I've seen some that were like, eh. And I'll say this, and I'm not just saying it because you're our guest on the show, but for me, one of the most fun and exciting tournaments to play in since my kids have started playing lacrosse 12 years ago when we moved back to Winter Park is the Orlando Open. First of all, I love it because it's only an hour drive from my house, so I don't have to get a hotel. But that's just me, because I have to get hotels for everything else when I go to Baltimore, Philly, and everywhere else. But I love the fields at Champions Gate. I love seeing the little guys all the way up to the high school, seeing lots of Florida teams. And I feel like over the last handful of years, I'm seeing more and more teams from out of state, which is really cool too. So speak to the growth of the Orlando Open. Like, how did this thing start, and like how much it's grown?
Yeah, well, it started probably 2010 with Gary and I when we first formed our business, Orlando Lacrosse Company. We were trying to get events going in Orlando because there wasn't much, if anything, here. We used to do it out at UCF. Went a couple years. There's another group with, Coach Healy, Tom West, Chris Spalding running a competing event, and eventually we combined the events because they were the same weekend, fighting over teams, and then I think we are all the beneficiary of geography in Florida, and then also basically the time of year it is, which the way the calendar works for most high school teams, it was always a heavy high school tournament, and then the youth has sprouted around that as youth lacrosse has grown in the last 13 years or whatever. But generally speaking, you're running your high school club, and it's loosely affiliated by areas you live that end up as a lot of high schools, and it's kind of a last great tune-up before spring there. You get to play, with the draw, you get to play people from other areas, and then also, fortunately for us, it's a wonderful time to come to Florida.
It's in December.
In the 70s, yeah. So we get teams from Maryland. We had a team from Wisconsin last year, Pennsylvania. Roswell High School, the 2023 Georgia State champs have been coming the last couple of years, and it's kind of grown. Just we try to do a good job. We got a decent venue and. Get the schedules out early.
And you're at three locations now, right?
For this coming year, we're at Omni and Austin Tyndall. So fortunately, that's only the two because that gets obviously a little hectic because nobody wants to split it up. But when you get, we've had 170 teams there before.
Wow.
You got to, you can accommodate them at multiple complexes. So it's fun. We're very lucky. It's awesome that the other teams appreciate coming there. We try to offer diverse levels of competitions for whether you're a developmental club or if you are the absolute gunners. Like I'm sure you guys are well aware, the South Florida club teams, Ponte Vedra, all their youth programs are sensational, and it makes sense for them to meet in the middle and we're in the middle. So
the legit, I can't even, I have 5 kids, so people think my schedule and my life is crazy, but I can't even imagine trying to schedule 170 teams and it's coaches and parents and all this. It's got to be mind-boggling. I'm sure you guys spend months preparing for this thing.
Yeah, there's a team of about 4 of us that bust our tails doing it, and it's challenging. There's some very talented people behind the scenes that are kind of the key to smoothing all that out, because you're only as good as the way you organize it, and getting people in and out in a 3-hour window, not making people wait around all day, not playing the same teams from your region, and then let alone if you open the door to any sort of request from anybody, then that just has a cascading effect to the logistics of the whole thing. So.
And then dealing with referees.
Generally try not. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's.
And the referees that don't want to coach Collins games.
Oh, that's the number one thing we deal with, is that people have their referee complaints, and I always preach to my kids that I coach, to my sons. I've never seen a referee put a ball in the goal. I've seen them do some pretty other ridiculous stuff, but when you have a large event, it's very difficult to get experienced referees on when you're running 20 fields on every field. But that's also something we're constantly trying to improve. But I would encourage anybody that's in my influence, get ready for the next play. But that is the number one fire I have to put out the day of, and it sucks.
Other than the referees, what's the toughest challenge that you guys face at the Orlando Open? I know the scheduling and everything else, but what is the number one thing that you dread?
For me, honestly, it's just making sure people show up, and then people that want to come back to it, people have a good time. I dread the parking situation is often pretty unpleasant, but it's not something we can directly control. I want people to get, because they're paying money to do this, I want them to have a good experience. That's really what it is. I don't feel like I can relax until it's gone, and that 10% of the people are going to hate it no matter what, and then hopefully the effort was worth it, that the other people enjoy it and they want to come back.
I don't know if you're going to find much better natural turf fields than Champions Gate, because those things are like a golf course.
Yeah.
It
took us a lot of years to get in there. They built those things with the idea of attracting the European professional soccer clubs, and finally they had a couple changes in personnel. They decided to let us in there, and then they decided that they enjoyed it because the travelers fill up the hotels, and they make money, and it's pretty cool.
I've been in that bar.
We are. I'm actually the president of the Post Collegiate Lacrosse League. We got a very vibrant league that's been around since the 70s, but that's where we play our championships too, which is quite a treat for the old guys. So it's cool.
Well, what's the dates again for the Orlando Open this year for 2023?
It's the first weekend in December. December
Saturday and
2nd,
Sunday.
3rd. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
awesome.
So.
Yeah, great event. And if you have a youth lacrosse club team, you need to be checking into that. And if you just want to see good lacrosse, come out and watch. It's I think it's like $10 to park out there, and it's more lacrosse than you could handle in a day in every age group. I love seeing the little dudes playing like 7-on-7 or whatever, the 6-on-6, the little guys. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. It reminds me of Gus out there with his helmet was too big and his head's bobbling around, and it's a lot of fun.
That's what and Danny's not only running the tournament; he's coaching our kids. So Danny's also coaching kids during the entire tournament as it's going.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the last thing I wanted to kind of touch on before we kind of wrap things up tonight is I just want to talk a little bit, Danny, about one of the things that is important to us here on the Garbage Goal podcast is just like talking it through. What is the future of Florida lacrosse? What does it look like? How do we get to a place where it continues to raise the bar and raise the level? What are the one or two things you see, like, man, if we could start to get better there, or that skill or that club or that thing, what is that thing for you? You have a young player, you've also been coaching for a long time, and you've been around Florida lacrosse. What would you say are one or two things?
So I think we're at a very special time. I think the level has raised, all those, we put everybody through that historical outlook from the 90s to now. Level is raised every year, but the level of lacrosse in the United States of America has raised every year. So we're not special in that regard. And Florida is obviously, definitely is on the map, for college coaches and recruiting, but we're not different than Texas. We're not different than Georgia. We're not, Colorado, California are ahead of us, and because they've been improving the same way. When we were talking earlier, and I was just pulling crazy names out of my head, I mentioned a coach every time, and that I didn't know you were going to ask me this question, but that is what it all comes back to. And I'm coach. I got 3 sons. My oldest 2 are playing right now. I'm coaching them. We talk about like Winter Springs being an absolute state powerhouse, and then falling off a little bit. Same thing with Lyman. It's the consistent lineage of coaches and instruction. Our sport has a very high learning curve, and it is, and I do it literally. I coach the Bantam for the Winter Park Lacrosse Club. We've got 12 brand new first graders out there who, it hasn't even been that hot lately, but are now wearing pads for this crazy sport where they just this sucks. I don't want to do this, Mom. And without an active I'm not going to coach Bantam Lax forever. My sons are playing it, and it helps do what we do. But I will find the next guy that's going to coach it, and I already got people in mind whose kids are in kindergarten right now. And that's what I would say, and that would be kind of like a call to arms if you care about Florida lacrosse, is to get back involved. You're a young person who is gone. It's particularly what I love is I run a club called the LCO. We are a heavy emphasis on employing guys that play NCAA lacrosse and are back for the summer. Show me what you did. Show me how Alabama Huntsville warms up. Show me, bring it. You got to always be. There's a million ways to skin a cat in lacrosse. Show me that stuff. Get those guys back. Get them involved. There's compensation. You're never going to get rich off it, but there's compensation to make it worth your while if you're a young person. Even if you're a dad with just an athletic background that knows how to accept information, maybe teach kids. Maybe you don't need to know everything about lacrosse, but you can learn the kids' names and make sure some of the greatest coaches in Florida lacrosse history are guys that didn't really have a deep playing background, but knew how to do the things to win at athletics, and obviously it helps to have the playing background.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that would be my emphasis is keep feeding the bottom of the funnel with the young kids. Yeah. Because that is happening everywhere else. And you look at I always compare us to Atlanta and Texas, because we were all emerging areas at the same time, and that's what they do there. There's obviously a lot of Georgia lacrosse. It's definitely spread out now, but it's centered around Atlanta, so there's a high density of people that live there with strong lacrosse backgrounds. But it's just get involved, get your neighbors involved, which is how this thing was built. Far before I was involved, and everything is just the recruitment of people, and trying to introduce it to kids that will like it and return and play more and beyond that, I mean, the technique, as long as they have a stick in their hands and they enjoy it, they will figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
And then everything else beyond that, the X's and O's can come later. But that will always be, I mean, that's the Baltimore, Long Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, because those kids have sticks from a young age, and it's second nature. It's just.
I always joke with Colin that they're when they come out of the womb, they're handed a stick, either a lacrosse stick or a hockey stick.
Yep.
They have a little 18-inch stick that they're given, and that's the first thing they handle. Yeah, no, I think that's huge. I mean, I'm not been around lacrosse as long, but it seems like that's going to be. I mean, you both are a great example of that. I mean, Colin playing at Winter Park, you haven't played at Lake Brantley, now you're coaching at Lake Mary. Colin at Winter Park, it's kind of that generational thing. The next group of people kind of taking it and carrying it beyond those dads that or guys that did it 20 years ago that didn't even know about the sport, just figured it out. Looked at a book and read some instructions and go, okay, here guys, this is how we do it. We do this.
That's Florida lacrosse, man.
Yeah.
That is dad's stepping up, mom's stepping up, of course. And filling that spot so we can have a team. And we're actually at a little bit of a disappointing point in Orlando right now. There's a lot of open jobs at the high schools.
There is.
And I'm not suggesting there's people sitting around that should
places.
take them, but but at places that had very good success before. But that's always, and even we'll probably never get there on having enough qualified coaches, but
sure.
That is what every little anecdote we've told tonight revolves around a coach. The players are obviously the players, but
yeah.
And I think you said it, Danny, which is the most amazing thing ever. Is you're coaching, and for anyone that doesn't understand it, I've got a young son that plays lacrosse, who I had to drag kicking and screaming to go get canceled today in Lightning, which was the worst experience I've had today. But Danny's coaching the first and second graders. Then you've got the third and fourth grade kids. Then you've got the fifth and sixth grade kids. So this is a labor of love. It is truly amazing to watch these Lightning and Bantam and watch these parents go out there, because at the end of the day, half these kids are crying and running around and not wanting to be there.
Hey, I have done some painful things in my life, including coaching Little League T-ball. But I coached Bantam one year for Winter Park Lacrosse Club back when it was Lax Rats. And I told my wife I would never, ever do it again. And honestly, and I would if I had to, but it is. You just have to be committed to do it. But I'll tell you this, it was some of the most fun. It was some of the most fun I've ever had. And I see those kids playing now in high school, or they're in middle school and high school. And I'm like, I remember teaching you how to just get a ground ball. I didn't even hardly know how to get a ground ball, but I showed you. And now you're playing at high school level. It's so awesome.
No, half the time you're trying to get them not to stop hitting each other. I mean, they're arming them with weapons, and you're like, stop.
And that's honestly probably where the inexperienced dad is more beneficial than maybe a college stud who doesn't have kids. But
keep it simple. Keep it simple. My thing was the KSS. Keep it simple, stupid. Just keep it simple. So, well, listen, Danny, man, we're so excited to have had you on the Garbage Goal. What you got?
Before you let Danny go, I've got to ask the question.
Oh boy!
You were not only a prolific high school player that never beat Winter Park. We won't talk about that. You're a great college player. You're a great senior player. But there was a time in between college and your senior days where you did play professional lacrosse.
I never played. I signed a professional contract. I was released before the season, but I was in the mix. There was a year. The New York Titans of the NLL moved to Orlando. That year was freaking awesome. Colin, you go to the games and everything. They were played in the
100%.
arena. It was
the
the
greatest
coolest
thing ever.
It was lacrosse's night out. 6,000 people. If you ever been to an NLL game, they're not afraid.
Music blaring, alcohol
music
flowing.
blaring. I truly believe. I mean, I could play, but I think they kind of picked up a few of the hometown boys to maybe put a few asses in seats, because they definitely didn't need me. But I did sign a contract. I never got paid a dime, but I did sign a contract. So, and it was, I will say, I mean, because it was not an expansion team. It was the New York Titans relocated. So Ryan Boyle, Casey Powell, Matt Vince were on that team. They went to the conference finals.
That's awesome.
I was a fan with wonderful front row tickets to watch all that. But I appreciate you bringing that up. I honestly hadn't thought about it in a long time. But I don't walk around saying I was a professional lacrosse player. I was a practice dummy. What's that?
You own an Orlando Titans shirt. That's all I want to know because I don't own anything Orlando Titans.
I got one. I got one somewhere. Yeah.
That's so awesome. I did not even know that. That's gonna have to be a whole show. We might have to you back just to talk about that because I didn't even know there was a team that had moved to Orlando.
It was sick. It was very successful, but we obviously we're probably boring people at this point.
The fall of it.
The fall of Orlando Titans is as exciting as the talk of the entire season.
That is a Netflix documentary. That's a
yes. It is unbelievable.
That's going to be a great story for another day for sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Danny, thanks so much for joining us on the Garbage Goal podcast. We really enjoyed hearing all the stories. Hope you have great success with the Orlando Open. We will obviously be there. We're going to be. I'm going to probably be there with the Orlando Lacrosse Report, just sharing some stuff, photos, and some different things. I bought a little portable microphone, so I'm getting super fancy with my iPhone. Yeah, I'm going to show you that toy soon, Colin. So who knows what I'll get into when we get out there. But also, good luck next year, next spring, except when you play Winter Park, selfishly.
February 23rd.
No, in all seriousness, congrats on the state championship. And look forward to seeing you in December. Even though we live in the same neighborhoods, I'll probably pass you tomorrow anyways. Yeah. And, we really appreciate you being here. So thanks so much. And,
I appreciate it, guys. This was a lot of fun. And thanks for doing this, man. This is long overdue for Greater Florida lacrosse.
All right. Thanks for joining us on the episode 1, Colin. Episode 1 of the Garbage Goal podcast. Here we go. All right. Thanks. See you next time.
All right.